Have you ever thought something was true, believed something was true, insisted something was true, only to find out that it wasn't? When those things happened for me, I've reached this point, maybe it's the years of life that I've lived or the spiritual study I've done. There's a moment of celebration locked into those moments because it reminds you that you're still growing, you're still learning, and we're never quite done. Don't ever listen to anybody who says that they've reached the peak. We're all works in progress. All right, so here's what happened. Last year, and I'm talking last year, like even maybe late last year in late summer, I get into my car, start driving around, and I hear this rattling sound, and it's coming from the passenger side, and I'm locating it somewhere around the vents. And I decide that there's a leaf or something stuck in my vents, and that as I'm driving, it's rattling around. And I do all sorts of things. I turn the air conditioning on full blast. I turn the heater on full blast. I do every little thing I can with the air conditioning system and it doesn't work. This rattling sound continues. So, convinced that there is a leaf stuck in my vent, I get a hold of my brother eventually. And my brother's very mechanically inclined. He's just, an engineer, a tinkerer. Back in high school, he was always toying on cars and stuff. So, he's my guy. And so I go to my brother and I say, Look, I have a leaf somewhere stuck in the vent and I can't get it out. He says, No worries, I got you covered. Takes out the shop vac and he starts vacuuming it with this super powerful professional grade shop vac and get in the car, drive it around. It's still there. And he says, You know what? If you have something stuck in there, it's deep and it's going to require taking off the whole, like going under the hood and taking off the whole, casing where the air system is, the AC. He's like, you know what? That's more time than I want to spend, and I might mess something up. So you need to take it to your mechanic. And I think, oh man, he has described it to me in terms where I am now creating a story that this is going to take a lot of time and it's going to be very expensive. So what do? I put it off. I procrastinated. I decided I'll take care of it one of these days. And I found 100 other things to occupy myself. I just drove with this rattling sound. I made fun little jokes about it. People get in the car, they say, What's that? I go, Oh, those are my tenants. They're just, rattling around a little bit. Or somebody would say, Oh, what's that rattling sound? And I said, Who's your favorite drummer? And they'd tell me their favorite drummer. That's who it is. And so we'd name it. And so I have a group of friends, they named him Larry from U2, Larry Mullen. And so it was like, everybody had fun, ha ha, rattling sound. And then after a few months, they'd be like, You gonna get that fixed? I'm like, Well, I am gonna get it fixed, but I already know it's going to take an enormous amount of time. And it sounds like it's going to be really expensive and, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking other things I'd like to do with the money rather than send it over to my mechanic. So for months, I told you this happened last year. Okay, I am recording this at the end of June 2026. So last year, it was a while ago. I just happened to be out and about and I was near my mechanic. Now, my mechanic lives a few towns away, so it's not like I can just pop over there anytime I want. He's usually really, really busy. I generally, if I call, there's never any answer because they're so busy. So I do my best, like get there real early in the morning and try to get the best spot. Well, it was like 4 in the afternoon. I happened to be driving by and I made this big decision. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stop by the mechanic. His name's Larry. Great guy, Larry. I was going to stop by and see Larry, and I'm just going to say, Larry, I have this situation. I want you to tell me if it's fixable, if I have to go to some kind of place that specializes in air conditioning. I'm like throwing this whole story. He goes, Well, what's the problem? I said, There's like a leaf or something stuck in the vents. And he said, Are you sure? I said, Well, what else could it be? Like, all right. And then we get in the car and we start driving. And like Less than a minute into driving, he says, "That's not a problem with your vent." Like, Larry, this is the problem with my vent. It's my car. I'm hearing the rattling noise. It's the problem with my vent. And he says, "Stick your hand out the window." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll stick my hand out the window." And he's like, "Stick your hand out the window and feel up on that little ridge that kind of goes where the door, where the door opens, and it's kind of that little area where it's sliding down the rear view mirror. I mean, not the rear view mirror, the front windshield." And he says, "Do you feel anything?" And I said, "Well, I feel rubber stripping, weather stripping." And he says, "Yeah." He goes, "I think there's something loose there." Like, Larry, how could there be something loose there? So he pulls over and he gets out of the car and he shows me that there's this little bit of weather stripping, this tiny little strip of it that somehow like kind of split away, and it was flapping the whole time. It was just flapping. And I said, "Larry, what does this mean? Oh no." And I'm still catastrophizing the entire event. Like, I seem to be hooked to this. Like, I need story, I need drama, I need peril, I need a reason to procrastinate. And he said, I go, "What do we have to do?" Oh no. And I'm thinking we have to, all these things. He goes, "We're going to cut it off." Cut it? Do you have like some special equipment that you got to use? I'm like, I won't shut up. And he just looks at me like, just knock it off. Go back to his garage. I mean, we drove like a minute and back. He knew instantly what it was and what it wasn't. And I'm waiting. I'm just sitting there waiting. And he runs back to inside the garage. He comes out with just a pair of scissors, just a regular pair of scissors. And he grabs the rubber stripping, snip, snip. And he just kind of like dangles it in the air like a snake. And I'm like, "Oh my God, Larry, that was it?" He goes, "That was it." "Do I owe you?" He goes, "Please." And I'm like, "Oh my God, Larry, this is why I'm your loyal customer." "Larry, you're my hero." And he's like, "Go home, go home." And I'm sitting there. I decide I'm just like gotta laugh at myself. I have to take my own inventory for this moment. And I went over to see my friend Amelia. Amelia and I were spiritual sisters, so I could unpack the deeper meaning of all of this. And I'm telling her the story, and she is laughing so hard because she's ridden in my car so many times, and she's like, "When are you gonna get that fixed?" I'm like, "It's so much to get it fixed." It was nothing. It took like 5 minutes and $0 and 0 cents. Now, the reason I think that's such a great spiritual lesson is, number one, it reminds me that I'm not always right, that my great ideas aren't always the greatest thing in the world. And, sometimes they are. And sometimes the universe gives me a little feedback, like, could have done better. So I started thinking about the work of Byron Katie. And Byron Katie, if you don't know who she is, she's been around for, gosh, I think her book came out in the 90s, Loving What Is. And she's all about acceptance of just life on life's terms, and stop fighting reality was the phrase I remember picking up from her. Oh my goodness, like 25 years ago when I read her book. It must have been like 2000 or something like that. It was phenomenal, life-changing. I loved it. And she has a little exercise, and you could look it up online, where she has these questions that she has you ask yourself when you're in some kind of a thing, like your car is making a sound and you've decided that it's going to be too expensive and too time consuming to fix. Her first question is it true? Well, I don't know. It could be true. How do you know it's true? I didn't know it was true. Now, what I did is I made the decision, I created the story that there was a leaf stuck in my vent. I then gave that story to my brother, and because I'm very convincing, and sibling dynamics, I was very convincing. And he was like, "Okay, there's a leaf in the vent." I just saved him the trouble of having to look, but he wasn't able to fix it. Based on the story I gave him and based on what he knows, he then told me what would be the next step, which involved, time and money and people tearing my car apart. So I just lived with that story. And in 5 minutes, I found out it wasn't true. Isn't Isn't life great? So I just offer this to you. What is the story you're telling yourself? What is a story that you're telling yourself about something that you are just convinced is true? Because you know what? It may or may not be true. That look someone gave you, maybe you've created a story about how they hate you and they're mad at you, may or may not be true. Somebody sent you a text message, but it didn't have a smiley face emoji at the end of it. So you're creating a story that they're somehow mad at you. Look at the stories that we create. So that's my invitation to you for this week, is to just look and see what are the stories you're creating. Because that is tied to this whole thing called life, the way that we interact with each other, the way we listen to each other, the way that we hold space for each other. And just think of the effect it has on your nervous system when you've cooked up a story about time and money and it wasn't even needed. All right, tell me what you think. That resonates. And remember, we're all works in progress.